The subjunctive is a form of verb used in formal speech or formal writing. Now the key word here is formal. Very. The subjunctive shows us things that could or should happen. You use it to show things like hopes, dreams, demands, or suggestions. So what does that mean? Basically, the verb is modified in the subjunctive form into something that could, should, would, or might happen under certain circumstances. The subjunctive only uses the simple form of the verb, also sometimes called the base form. For example, the simple form of the verb to walk is walk, and the simple form or base form of the verb to run is run. There are exceptions, as always, with the English grammar. It really wouldn't be English grammar without the exceptions, but the main exception is with the verb form to be. But we'll look at some examples later. On screen now, you can see the different ways we can use the subjunctive. We'll have a look at each of these in more detail within this video. We'll start with the verb plus that. When trying to recognise the subjunctive mood, the word that can often be really useful. If the verb can be followed by that and something that should happen, you are using the subjunctive form. Here are some examples. I request that you remain silent. We ask that people walk on the left. We require that he leave the shop. Here you can see we have the simple form of the verb request, ask, require. The word that followed then by something that should happen. Being silent, walking on the left, leaving the shop. Notice in the final example with the third person subjunctive, we don't add an S. It's not, we require that he leaves the shop. Now let's look at the table and look at after phrases plus that. The same rules apply here, but instead of just the verb, we also have an adjective. For example, it is important that you be present. It is best that the shop be locked at night. It is necessary that he join the company. Notice again that in the final example with the third person subjunctive, we don't add an S. It's not, it is necessary that she joins the company. Next, we'll move on to I, she, he, plus were. Earlier, I mentioned that there was an exception to the rule when it comes to the simple form of the verb to be. Let's look at an example. If I were Prime Minister, I would make my birthday a national holiday. In this imaginary scenario, you might notice that the verb form seems to be incorrect. The sentence should be, if I was Prime Minister, I would make my birthday a national holiday, because I used the singular pronoun I. So why didn't I? Well, I didn't do that because this is one of the features of the subjunctive mood. When I use I, she, or he, I use the verb form were. Now let's look at the verb plus that plus be. This isn't really a new structure, more of an add-on, so we can reuse examples from our earlier sentences. You can see on screen the sentences we have already looked at. Now, we're going to keep the verb and the word that, but change the ending to include the simple form be. I request that you remain silent could become I request that you be silent. We ask that people walk on the left could become we ask that people be sensible and walk on the left. We require that he leave the shop could become we require that he be not in the shop. If that last one sounded odd to you, that's because it's really weird, it's really strange, but it is grammatically correct. If we're not careful, the subjunctive mood can make speech or things that we write sound very unusual and almost like a pirate. There is a good reason for why it can sound so strange, and that's because it used to be very common in Old English, and it's not something that we really use very much anymore. When it is used in speech, it can make the speaker sound very formal and sometimes quite old too, as younger people don't really speak like that. Many British people don't even know that subjunctive form exists. It is extremely formal and often hard to find in general use. Let's look at an example. If she were to go now, she'd be late. That isn't ever something that I would usually say. What I would be more likely to actually say would be something that sounds more like this. If she goes now, she'll be late. Or more likely still, she's going to be late. I wouldn't use the subjunctive, I would use the indicative. So what was the point in the video if I'm telling you that we don't use it? It's definitely worth knowing for a time if you come across it, more in written language. If you weren't aware of it, you might think that someone had used the verb form incorrectly, when in actual fact what they'd done was use the subjunctive form, or subjunctive mood. You might need to use this if you were giving a formal speech, and you wanted to sound knowledgeable and educated. Using the subjunctive could help you achieve this. And also if you knew you had an upcoming test that was going to ask you about this grammar structure, it would then definitely be worth knowing. Click here if you'd like to see some more videos from us. Until next time, bye bye!